TopMed Talk. I'm Monty, Mythen, Editor-in-Chief of TopMed Talk, coming to you live from Irvine in Southern California, where we're in the Edwards Life Sciences Global Headquarters celebrating their 60th anniversary. So I'm here with three special guests. I'm going to start with Thomas Scheeren, who's a professor from Groningen in the Netherlands. I hope I'm getting better at saying that, Thomas. He's a guest recently on TopMed Talk, where we had a roundtable discussion about HPI, this new technology that has the ability to predict hypotensive episodes in the perioperative period. So, Thomas, welcome. Welcome to Southern California, to this wonderful event.
Thank you to be back on TopMed Talks, and this time in another place with lovely weather.
So just to remind us, your work, you're mainly a cardiothoracic anaesthetist, anesthesiologist, is that correct?
That's correct, but I'm also doing a general anesthesia course, major abdominal, maybe two times a month. So, and this is where my experience mainly comes from, because this is the indication for this new exciting technology mainly. And
your relationship with Edwards Life Sciences is you've been one of the first people to evaluate a number of their technologies, but in particular what we're concentrating on today is this so-called HPI.
Yes, that's right. I was amongst the chosen few who had the opportunity to play with this new variable and get some experience for more than a year now. And yeah, I would like to talk about my experience with you.
Great. Those of you who want to listen to a longer explanation about HPI and listen to other people's experiences, including a group from the UK from the Royal Free, if you put hypotension, for example, into the search engine on TopMed Talk, you'll get other discussions. But briefly, Thomas, remind us what HPI does. What's it all about?
It's all about predicting that a hypotensive event might occur in the near future. And this is a major step forward compared to the monitoring that we used to have at the moment, because this is only looking at the status quo, at the current hemodynamic status of the patient, which might not tell us a lot about what is happening in the near future. And the HPI is a step forward in this way, as it allows us to predict the development of a hypotensive event before it actually occurs. And this is a major step forward, because it gives us some time to take reactive measures, to think about the reason for this hypotension before it actually occurs. So
it's an Edwards Life Sciences specific technology. It's fair that we be clear about that. And yes, it is at the moment dependent on having an arterial line in the patient, which we commonly use for higher risk patients, connected up to the monitor. We're looking at our normal variables being recorded, but then there's this new number that says the likelihood of hypotension happening is changing, going up, for example.
Exactly, and it does so by looking at the arterial pressure waveform, very particularly the many features of this arterial pressure waveform, because this changes prior to hemodynamic collapse, as you will. There are features of this waveform that change the shape of it, which cannot be detected by the eye. So we need some monitoring, some computer machine learning things to detect these changes and display it to us in form of a number as this device does it.
Because as we've discussed a number of times now on TopMed Talk, the initial skeptical reaction is, well, I'm watching the patient like a hawk and I'm really good at this and I know when they're going to become hypotensive. And as Dr. Spiro from the Royal Free shared with us at the evidence-based perioperative medicine meeting in London, he had the same scepticism, and he proved himself to be wrong. Is that your experience too?
Yes, even I was a skeptic in the beginning, because I just thought it's just a mirror of the development of mean arterial pressure. But you have to look at this very closely and do some receiver operating characteristic analysis to see that it's actually much better than all of the other hemodynamic variables that we have, including the change in mean arterial pressure, to predict these hypotensive events.
So Bart Geerts also from the Netherlands. Where are you working at the moment, Bart?
Amsterdam UMC.
And is that a recent name change?
That is a new recent name change indeed. So we merged with the other academic hospital in Amsterdam.
Okay.
So arguably one of the biggest hospitals now in Europe.
Excellent. And your clinical practice is predominantly what?
Basically the same as Thomas. So cardiothoracic surgery, and then maybe a bit more major abdominal surgery as well.
And you do some critical care as well, or
not anymore? Not anymore. Not after we work together, basically. Not that there is any correlation between that.
Thanks for that, Bart. So you're a recovering intensivist, are you? No.
Indeed.
And you've used this HPI variable as well. Is that right?
Well, I think we were one of the lucky centers to also have this tool available early. We also did a trial where we basically collected the data, not as much for the arterial line, but more for the non-invasive monitoring tools that Edwards also provides, so the ClearSight.
Okay, and you're with the ClearSight monitor, which is the finger cuff way of deriving arterial waveforms without the need for an arterial line.
Exactly.
What did you find? Equally impressive results, or?
Well, basically what we did, we copied very much Maxime's work, but applied it to the ClearSight. And we found very much the same numbers, to our surprise. You'd think that non-invasive is slightly less accurate than the direct signal itself. And then we find similar numbers, so the ROC curve Thomas was alluding to is pretty much the same.
Well, at the moment, the HPI has had regulatory approval in both Europe and more recently in the USA. So this is out there now, isn't it? It's not necessarily been launched because at the moment they put it in the hands of super users.
Right.
But you sound as though you're both convinced it has great potential.
I think the best thing, and it's also going back to previous discussions, putting it into other people's hands and not your own. I am biased by now. I've done some trials, and of course, in a way, you want it to work. But giving it to my more cynical colleagues sometimes is also a good proof of whether it will fly ultimately. And what I've seen is that anesthetic nurses and anaesthetists have largely adapted to it, started using it, even without having the papers out there at that point in time. So I thought what they saw was, I ignore this alarm, and then you do that 5 to 10 times maybe, but ultimately you start believing because you see the validation happening in that patient.
So we're also joined by Maxime Cannesson, a name extremely well known in this field. Maxime originally from France, then working more locally to this at UC Irvine, and now up in Los Angeles, I think, in a senior leadership role in perioperative medicine. Is that correct?
Yeah, I'm from France originally, but I've been at UCLA for the past 3 years. My position in the department, I'm the vice chair for perioperative medicine. And some may wonder why, with like the research I do on technology, why do I end up being vice chair for perioperative medicine? And I actually think it's related because some of the technology we develop to some extent going to disrupt the way we practice intraop. And that's why I believe in the fact that the value of anesthesia is going to be outside of the operating room. So it's actually related.
Yes. So your name's extremely well known in this space, if you don't mind me saying that, Maxime. One of the internationally renowned researcher in this space, as our other guests are as well. But more recently, you've attracted some attention because you've been using closed loop systems. Can you expand on that?
Yeah, so I think globally the two concepts of predictive analytics and automation in any kind of fields are actually related. So these are two topics that we started working on maybe 5 years ago. The predictive analytics that led to development to HPI, and then in parallel the development of automated system to deliver medication with the goal of improving some physiological variable in our patients. And so closed-loop systems are systems that are like well known in the mainstream as automated systems, which actually takes the information from the monitors, set some goals for physiological variables like blood pressure, cardiac output, depth of anesthesia, and deliver medication automatically in order to achieve this goal in a way that the human being would not be able to do because our attention span and our ability to focus on specific targets is not as good as what a computer would do. And so the long-term vision of these two concepts is to merge predictive analytics together with closed-loop systems. So that's something that may sound a little bit like science fiction to some, but when I look back 5 years ago, it was really science fiction. People would try to understand what is going to be the value proposition of this system. And I think today we've made some progress and we've seen some applications of this concept.
And have you done it both with fluids to address the volume issue, but also cardioactive drugs? Have you gone that far as well? Or have investigators gone? that
So with the fluid management, we've developed a closed-loop system that now has been developed by Edwards Life Science that led to a very first iteration of this closed-loop system. That's the AFM, the Assisted Fluid Management System. That's an open-loop system. With vasopressor, we are in the early stages of development of a closed-loop system that would deliver any kind of vasopressor drug and would maintain blood pressure within narrow ranges. So that's something we've done a lot of in silico studies in computers. And we've done some animal studies that are about to be published, hopefully pretty soon. And then we've also done some human studies in Europe. When we develop system for fluid management or for vasopressor administration, we try to be drug agnostic, that the system gives whatever fluid the clinician chooses. We don't interact with the goal of the clinician in terms of hemodynamic management. We don't choose what should be the blood pressure target or what should be the cardiac output target for the patient. We let clinician choose this. The same way we let clinician choose the drug they want to use to administer to their patient, because we believe that this is the medical strategy and the clinician should be in charge of it. But what we ask the system is to serve the clinician, is that once the clinician choose the drug and choose the target, the system is here to assist the clinician in delivering this medical strategy.
We talked before about the fact that it sounds to me a little bit like if you're a sailor, for example, that you sometimes ask the autopilot equivalent to keep the boat on track while you go and attend to something, make a cup of coffee or go to the loo or whatever it is. But for very many sailors, apart from very high-level helms, the autopilot's usually slightly better than the human. Is that what you think will happen here as well?
Well, so I like the analogy with the sailor in the sense that you have an autopilot that puts you on target and that keeps the cap, right? But you also have the weather forecast for the sailor that's going to tell you what's going to happen next day, and then the sailor in charge changes the direction sometimes to bypass an obstacle, right? Is it better than the actual sailor? I actually don't think that automation and predictive analytics do better than expert clinician.
Yes.
I actually believe that an expert clinician who spends a lot of time focusing on the patient is going to do as good as the automation. I think these kind of concepts are going to elevate the ability of trainees or mid-level provider to do a job that's going to be as good, as accurate as an expert clinician. And if you look at the big picture, if you're able to take people who are just out of residency or still in training, and you make them perform at the level of an expert clinician, the expert clinician may be upset, so that's where we are going to get the pushback, right, to some extent.
Yes.
But overall, it makes the care better for a whole patient population. So I don't think this system do better than experts. On the long run, they may, because just the fact that the vigilance of the system is higher than the vigilance of a human being. But what they do is that they augment the ability of a trainee or mid-level provider to deliver care as good as the expert.
But even the greatest experts sometimes have to put their attention towards something else, go and draw a drug up or go look around the patient. And Thomas, where do you see all this going? Do you think it's an inevitable part of the future, or...?
I certainly do. I have no personal experience with those systems, but I'm an associate editor of the Journal of Clinical Monitoring and Computing, which sees a lot of these papers coming using this technology, and it sounds very exciting. So I'm very sure that it will make it to the market and will be adopted by the clinicians very soon. Do
you think we'll go straight to closed loop, or do you think we'll go via the passage of advice, decision support, and then semi-closed, and that's the journey? Because it's regulatory, it's a complicated regulatory area. So
I will dare no prognosis what the regulatory authorities will think about it, because they have their problems with these decision support systems usually. But if these problems are solved, I think why not directly go to a closed loop approach?
Because in discussion about it, there's two ways of interpreting it. You can either, the machine can be making the decisions, if you see what I mean, or the machine can be supporting you to make your decisions.
Exactly.
But so you're the owner, as Maxime was referred to. You remain the owner of your decision.
Exactly. So the doctor should have the last word in confirming the decision of the machine and or approving it or disapproving it, if necessary.
Bart, thoughts on this?
Well, I think if you look at radiologists, they've had to work with AI a bit longer than we are used to now, I think, because images are more standardized.
Yes.
What I see there is that there's consequent data coming out looking at mammograms that radiologists and the AI working together actually outperform both apart.
Yes.
So I think I really would say that if you get these systems into our clinical practice in ICU or anesthesia or emergency department, you'll see that they will join up. That's what I think.
Any concerns you have?
Well, of course, there's also the factor of de-skilling.
Yep.
So you'll probably have these trainees, they start leaning on this tool. What can they work without eventually? And do they still get the full experience? So ultimately, will they perform less than the AI? We don't know. But that's something that I would look out for.
I'd like to follow up on this one because I think that's an issue that you see with any kind of technology, not only medical technology. But if you take a device as simple as the pulse oximeter, before the pulse oximeter, it would take a trainee months and months of clinical training to identify and diagnose accurately cyanosis in a patient in the ICU or in the operating room. When the pulse ox came up, suddenly you just had to tell the trainee that when the SpO2 is less than 90% and the SpO2 waveform is okay, your patient has cyanosis. And then within 5 minutes, a trainee would learn how to detect cyanosis in their patient. And it's true that today all of us, we rely heavily on the SpO2 waveform and the SpO2 number, and we are probably not as good as our mentors to detect cyanosis, but at the end of the day, it makes anesthesia safer. We are moving the expertise, but we still have challenges to solve in the future.
So we're going to have to wrap now. Time is against us. So thank you very much indeed for giving up your time. Thank you again to Edwards Life Sciences for the opportunity to be here, celebrating 60 wonderful years. Very, very impressive. And if you're in here early when I was talking to the other guys, I gave them a billboard each to put up a message about hemodynamic management for the young, is the way I expressed it. Bart, did you want to put anything on your billboard?
Maybe I want to tap into the dogma challenge as well. Open your mind and do challenge all the new concepts that are coming out. So open your mind.
Open your mind. Thomas, what do you want on your billboard?
My keyword would be, in terms of looking at hypotension, proact beats react.
Oh, excellent. Maxime?
I would say not all intelligence is artificial.
What a great note to end on. Gentlemen, thank you very much indeed. Goodbye now from Top Med Talk. Top Med Talk.